Eugene Peterson wrote, spiritual formation is not something we master. It's not something over which we have much, if any, control. And that fact puts spiritual formation at odds with much of modern Western experience. So I'm curious, what are the misconceptions or misdirected expectations that you come across when you interact with people around the idea of spiritual formation? Don't all jump in at once, please.
I think in my world, it's, which is largely evangelical, it's considered quote unquote Catholic, and that Catholic is somehow bad. And that's what I bump up against. And largely it's not so much as it sounds, but that people have had difficult experiences in the past, mostly in liturgy, that leads them to believe that something like spiritual formation is either too mystical or it's rote in some way, and that it's not expressive of our own individualized whatever, needs at the moment. And it also is not appropriately goal driven, and I say that with sarcasm because, like, as I was writing my book, what I was thinking was, and I think the drive I had was, okay, what difference is this going to make in someone's life? And I want to write down, if you do this, then X, Y, and Z will happen, and that's like what people expect. So you like read the, if you're people that read the conclusion first, you go, okay, so yeah, that's happened to me. Okay, great. That's what I want, And what I realized is and I wrote this somewhere, I have no idea what's going to happen. I just know that God is at work. And so there's something about not knowing in this culture that I'm in, the expected result, or not having a clear, here's what's going to happen when you do this, a clear equation of success, that is uncomfortable. And people want to know, like, well, if I do this, what happens? And what are the 5 steps I can take? And what are the, whatever. And I think that just makes everybody so uncomfortable. And so there's this resistance because it doesn't fit our, like post-enlightenment, whatever way of thinking.
That's good.
I think what you're saying about mystery is really important. Spiritual formation is very humbling because we can't quantify it, and we really can't say how it happened. And my venue for spiritual formation in terms of ministry is definitely spiritual direction. And I just see this all the time. In spiritual direction, it's not a codependent relationship. I have to say this, but it's usually years long. And I have been meeting with people 8 to 10 years, I mean, some even more than that. And I see them change. I mean, not tomorrow, but over the period of all these years, I see such a difference. And there is this sense of, how did that happen? I mean, spiritual direction was a piece of it, but I also think the same thing is true. And I was going to ask you about this, Amy, that how you've noticed people changing as they've used these spiritual practices. Our brain waves change. I think physically we change, and yet we don't always know how. And we're really good in our evangelical churches with Bible study and with programs and with goals, and we can see when they are accomplished. And this is kind of outside. They happen through those things, but they don't happen just because of those things. And so I think the mystery is scary for people. It's not familiar.
Yeah.
I definitely echo that mystery. And I think what I've come across is how somebody's conception of God affects how they go into these practices. Is there a fear that he won't speak to them, that he doesn't love them, that he's let them down? It's under the current, and it doesn't come out right away, perhaps. But how people view God, I think, is really key to their willingness, Kelly, to be vulnerable, because if they think that God is this angry ruler who's going to judge them and call them to account, then they're not going to be willing to open their heart to pray and to welcome the Spirit in. So I think fear can definitely play a part, and to a fear of, Kelly, as you say, the Catholic practices, seeing it as Catholic. I mean, the guys and gals I was studying were Catholic before the Protestant church. So they were Catholic in the sense of that was what the church was then. So, and it was interesting. One of my evangelical friends asked me as I was doing this master's as an evangelical in a Roman Catholic Jesuit college at the University of London, asked me, how is your faith now at the end of it a couple of years ago? Have you, I think he was kind of asking, have you changed? And I said, no. I mean, if anything, I'm as strong in the Bible and the truth of the Bible and my love for God's word and my submitting to the Lordship of Christ and all of these kind of evangelical tenets of the faith. But I just was enriched by the experience of holding tight to who I am and my identity and my faith, and yet being able to welcome in, quite a lot of what I experienced. I wouldn't say everything. Of course, you have to be discerning, and not everything I wanted to ascribe to that I was experiencing. So mystery and fear and the reassurance of God, I think, is, that God really is a loving Father who runs toward us. He lifts up his robes and he runs toward us and welcomes us with his open arms, and the whole Trinity. So yeah.